great deception has to be a surprise to the people of Earth, no matter what the ruling governments have been told. The surprise has got to come when there's a threat to the global community, and that will force some stuff to come public from our records in the United States and from other governments. But it's got to be the people of planet Earth saying, we've got a nuclear war starting in the Middle East. Somebody probably, Israel will nuke Damascus, because of the weapons that are nuclear there from Iran. Something like that will happen that will cause the whole world to panic, thinking we're going into a global nuclear war. And so they will call for the peace treaty and whatever. And for the peace treaty to work, they're going to have the ability to control all the nuclear weapons in the world. Now, we've already seen, from past UFO reports in the northern part of the United States, some of our missile silos, where these UFOs were able to come over the silo and without going in to deactivate the missiles. So they have the authority. So at that point in time, they will appear and say, look, we've been here for a while. We've met with some of your leaders, and the only way to solve planet Earth is to help you and let us appoint, a leadership for the whole world, not just a country, and everything will be made, fair. And we'll appoint one of your people as the leader and back him with technology. And that way, it allows all the governments that are holding documents to release any they think would help this new world order formed by the quote unquote aliens helping us. So I see that happening. And at that time, if President Trump is in office, I'm sure there'll be things he think, okay, we can release this now and it'll make me look good, whatever. But the disclosure will come when they appear over our cities, like in the movie V, and you look up and here's a mile wide ship parked over your major cities. And okay, that's a reveal, all right, but it's their choice, not ours, and that's the way it's going to play. So that's the good news. The bad news is temporary. It's just 7 years from some start point, which we think is maybe next year. We're not sure. And at that point, things are going to get so bad on the planet that nearly, about 75 to 80% of the population is going to be dead due to war, disease, famine, and that kind of stuff, and weather. And there are things happening right now that you can't blame on the Illuminati or the New World Order or whatever, or even on Satan and his minions, because there are things happening in the sun and on our planet which are beyond control by us or by the evil ones that are here on the planet, because they got their wings clipped when they got down to Earth here, and that's why the project that I was recruited into in Australia under Dr. Teller, why we dealt with these beings and built facilities, manufacturing and tooling and that kind of stuff, underground and undersea, uh, because they didn't have everything they had in the heavens in the parallel universe where they lived. They were part of the revolution against God. They were cast down into our dimension, and some are still arriving. And the veil, if you wish, the physical veil between our universe and the parallel universe, which are the levels of heaven in the Bible, that veil is said to thin as we approach this time of the millennial reign. And we'll actually be able to see some of these demonic entities, just maybe ghost images, but we'll be able to see them now because they will become more visible as that veil thins.
So,
Well,
is
it's like the chaos in the earth is happening now. It'll get worse. And the Satan will say, on the one hand, um, I want chaos, I want division, I want you to worship me, and on the other hand, he will have this illusion to people saying, boy, we've got chaos and terrible things happening, not realizing that this hand over here is really orchestrating it all. And
mm,
they are being misled, as you say, misdirection by the magician's trick. Yeah, yeah. Think about this. I knew about all this stuff in 1978. Well, actually, even before that. But uh, I look at this and
why is it a slow drip, methodical deception, magician's trick? And not just you've talked about it. I've talked about it. Other researchers have talked about it. But it's even like I've heard. I think David Icke called it the totalitarian tiptoe. But it seems like this deception, this malevolent force amongst in the world, they do things methodically.
yeah.
Is that because if everything is quick, we'll just rebel and we will see through the BS or what?
Well, if it's done quick, it doesn't get the support of the people. You might get the support of governments, but the people have to be convinced of the need for global order. And to do that, you have to infiltrate the educational systems, the religious systems, and gradually convince them through movies and all that kind of stuff as well. This is the kind of world we really need, peaceful and, love, harmony, and everything together. So they lay that groundwork and then accelerate the negative pathways to nuclear war, possible asteroid impact, weather changes, famine, all that. And the people of the earth will then say, they read the press and they see how bad the situation is on the world in various places. And they say, wow, will no one help? How can we solve this? I mean, who do we go to?
Mm-hmm.
The beast is artificial intelligence. We've got three major AI computer systems, one in China, one in Northern Europe. We've got one here in the United States, in Utah. So these things are going to be one in one system. And the problem with AI computer, the beast, is that it's programmed by several programmers who had several different takes on value decisions. So when it has to make value decisions on human life and that kind of stuff and religious preferences, it's going to have a confusing set of circumstances. And it's kind of like, well, flip the dice, because there are two different ways that the AI can interpret action in Africa or the United States or whatever, depending on your moral code. And these codes conflict. And I don't think that the beast or the AI computer system will go, stop, I can't do it, and freeze up. It's going to take a direction that's positive in its mind and, punt.
Become a member on Patreon to get full access to all exclusive content. A few of the perks is the full-length ad-free video version of the interviews, face-to-face interviews, bonus shows, and behind-the-scenes footage. You will also receive the video interview way in advance before the audio-only interview gets dropped on all platforms. Sign up and become a member today for only $3 a month. The link is in the description.
Is there another Cosmic Conspiracy Part 2 coming down the road?
No, there's no time or money, because we have to print the thing, and it costs us tons to print it.
Yeah.
But on the website, I do things on the show images page at standeyo.com. You look at show images, click on that link, and I put up current events there, and some stay there all the time, in the lower part of the page, and others are changed as I need to during the week. Things are happening so quick that to wait and publish it, you're going to be behind. So I have to publish live, I think, to keep up with the things with the election, and after that with the sun. So I encourage people to visit that site free. Just go in there and read what's happening in the show images page every day if you want to.
So since we last talked, we've had an election. So what's your thoughts on Trump?
Well, man's not perfect. I like him, personality. A lot of people don't, but my company has had dealings with Tom Homan, his acting czar of the border, or going to be. And Tom has told us a number of things about President Trump, because he used to have lunch with him every Sunday. Anyway, I think he is what we need to try to put the brakes on what the communists, and let's call them what they are, have done to this country. They have, I think, influenced a lot of people on the Democratic side and bent their opinions with the control of the fake news, the three primary news agencies for the left, and the left is more appropriate name for them, because the Democratic Party has been overtaken by a small group who are pushing the communist agenda. And the communists obviously want to take over America. Karl Marx had said it's going to be our downfall, the free enterprise and all that kind of stuff. But and he said that they would surround us. They would go through Europe, and they would go through China and around. They would surround us, making communist satellites, satellite countries, and then they would attack the United States various ways, but mainly on the economy to start with, to weaken us. And they hit our education system. 2 generations ago, they've been putting stuff into people's heads that was just rubbish to suit the cause of the communist revolution. We've seen this pattern, time and again when they've hit South American countries, and it happened even in Russia when the Russian Revolution occurred, that they do these things to create division in the people, and they don't give a darn about the leadership. They place puppets on the leadership that's existing, and on the new leadership that will come out of a revolution. So right now they have got communist puppets. I'm sure even in the Trump electee, supposedly going to be his cabinet, they probably got influence or control over one or more people to be in that government as it takes control of the United States. So they play the game from both sides. But the left side has been really ruining us. Master chess moves. Like I say, 40, 50 years ago, they started this stuff. And my dad and I and his brothers, we formed a company in Dallas called Timely Publications back then. And we tried to alert people to what the communists were doing, the slow takeover of the United States, the corrupting of our schools, our religions, and, various things like that. And for a while, people were interested, maybe a year, and then they went to sleep and forgot about it because they'd just come out of World War II. And so in the late 50s, when we were doing this, they were saying, look, yeah, that's nice, but, we're tired of war, and let's relax. And so they didn't pay attention, and they let the communists sneak in under the cover there and influence our seminaries, influence our colleges. I mean, if you've seen the news of late and all the riots and stuff at these colleges, you realize that they've been infiltrated and they've taught a whole generation, maybe two, the bad thoughts, that would destroy capitalism, which has been working for us, but they're certainly trying to make it not. So yeah, I think the Trump administration is a way to go, but what's going to happen practically is he'll get in and start cleaning house. And the things that they don't openly address is what this is going to do to the economy. Let's say you fire 1 million government employees. That's 1 million people on the job market. And, the economy will suffer. The consumption will drop down, of products and stuff because of this unemployment. But that's just government workers. There are going to be other things that are going to impact employment. Um, Regulations on farms growing certain foods and things like that will change. This may affect the buying pattern and the availability of foods, certain types for a period of time. It's got to be done, but as Trump himself would say, it's going to be painful. It is. We are on the verge of losing the country, and this putting on the brakes like this is going to be fraught with problems. And he's the guy to spearhead the staff to do this because one man couldn't do it all by himself. And he's going to get rid of government workers that are just elected for life, or not elected, appointed for life. These people have got to get out of the government because they are hindering us greatly. And you can't solve everything in this government with EOs. You've got to solve some of it with legislation, proposed by the House to go through the Senate. A long process, but we got to start somewhere. And I am glad that he chose J.D. Vance as his vice president elect, because J.D. seems to agree with and present well like Trump does. So, what do you think?
Um, I think he needs to be careful, because he's already been they've already tried to take him out twice.
Oh yeah.
So I don't think, I think it's going to keep getting bumpy. Things are going to keep getting bumpy. I'm sure things will smooth out some, and then they'll have hit another bump, smooth out, bump. And then just the other day, I saw people in the UFO community saying that he's going to be the disclosure president. You
Mm-hmm.
know, so, and I know your thoughts on disclosure somewhat. About the deception, the alien deception, and I totally agree with that. So what's your thoughts on that? Is he, well, when I say disclose, if he does, if he does release, maybe he'll release documents, or he will say, I don't think he will be able to give out all the technologies and things like that. See, that's kind of a big overarching term, disclosure. Like, what do you mean disclosure? Everything, like documents, uh technologies, all that. It's a very overarching term, kind of like awakened. So and so is awakened. Okay, awakened to just left right politics, or awakened to everything.
Well, I'm sure that he won't release everything. There's no need to, but the Great Deception has to be a surprise to the people of Earth, no matter what the ruling governments have been told. The surprise has got to come when there's a threat to the global community, and that will force some stuff to come public from our records in the United States and from other governments. But it's got to be the people of planet Earth saying, we've got a nuclear war starting in the Middle East. Somebody probably, Israel will nuke Damascus, because of the weapons that are nuclear there from Iran. Something like that will happen that will cause the whole world to panic, thinking we're going into a global nuclear war. And so they will call for the peace treaty and whatever. And for the peace treaty to work, they're going to have the ability to control all the nuclear weapons in the world. Now, we've already seen, from past UFO reports in the northern part of the United States, some of our missile silos, where these UFOs were able to come over the silo and without going in to deactivate the missiles. So they have the authority. So at that point in time, they will appear and say, look, we've been here for a while. We've met with some of your leaders, and the only way to solve planet Earth is to help you and let us appoint, a leadership for the whole world, not just a country, and everything will be made, fair. And we'll appoint one of your people as the leader and back him with technology. And that way, it allows all the governments that are holding documents to release any they think would help this new world order formed by the quote unquote aliens helping us. So I see that happening. And at that time, if President Trump is in office, I'm sure there'll be things he think, okay, we can release this now and it'll make me look good, whatever. But the disclosure will come when they appear over our cities, like in the movie V, and you look up and here's a mile wide ship parked over your major cities. And okay, that's a a reveal, all right, but it's their choice, not ours, and that's the way it's going to play. So I do worry for the health of President-elect Trump and Vice President-elect Vance, and I'm glad that Trump chose Vance because they're a lot alike, and Vance has his own wealth and can fight, bribery and other kind of things that might be brought in, to hurt him. He's tough, and so I think he's a good backup for President-elect Trump. I hope that it doesn't come to him having to, take the place of the president being assassinated. So we pray for the Trump presidency, for their family, him and for Vance, for their teams, everybody they've appointed, that the good Lord will guide him in wisdom to handle the government of this country. We are told to pray for our leaders. I found it difficult to pray for the Biden administration, except for their, merciful judgment for the nastiness they did. But we are to pray for our leadership. And this coming leadership, if we can get to it in January 20th, is really worth praying for and supporting. And not praying for, God to be merciful in their judgment, but encourage him to do the right thing and help them. So that we pray for. I think that's a good prayer. We're going to have a civil war. There's no question about it, with various blue states saying that have sanctuary cities and stuff. They're forming their own kind of cabinet to be in opposition to the Trump cabinet. Now, that is already making us a nation divided, but it's not north and south or east or west. It's all over the place. It's religion, it's politics, it's finances. And this is going to force local wars. Like here in Colorado, we're supposed to be a blue state, sanctuary state. There are more and more of us suddenly saying, hey, no, let's go Republican, let's go Trump. This is the right way to go. So we're going to have, city against city type things here in this blue state. You can't stop that. But when that starts, when the shooting starts, in cities that are sanctuary cities and whatever, and the czars of the board trying to clean house and bring the troops in to pull out the illegals, when that happens, we are a nation divided, horribly divided. And it will mean that we're at our weakest point as far as defending the nation against other countries coming in. Now, I don't know whether I mentioned this last time we had a show together, but Holly and I were invited down to visit with the Shangopavi prophecy keepers at Second Mesa in Arizona in 1996. And he told us then that there was going, as he revealed the prophecy of this to his whole tribe that were gathered inside the enclosure there in that house, he said, look, I'm going to reveal prophecy now because this fellow, talking about me, is the fifth of 8 messengers coming to us in this time of the end of this age. And there's going to be a massive civil war in the United States. There will be China, Russia, and one Middle Eastern nation, he didn't know the name of at the time, that will invade the United States, burning cities and killing and whatever. And at that time, most of the United States will be occupied, but then suddenly, just as they've come into the country and occupied, they will turn around and all the troops will leave. And we don't know whether that's because of contamination from radiation from the bombs or whether it's biological warfare hanging around or whatever. But these are the Hopi prophecies of this time. And then you look at, well, like the vision of George Washington at Valley Forge in 1777. You can show people the link to it on my website. They can download it and read it at their leisure. But it tells about 3 great challenges that will come to the United States, and that was before we even officially formed and signed made the United States official. And so the first 2 have already come and passed. One, the second one, the Civil War, whatever. The last of these things is to happen. We're pretty sure now in George Washington's dream, and he was told everything about this by this angel that appeared before him there.
Bright angel descending to save the day, or something like that.
Yeah. As I say, we can look at that in more detail in a minute. But these things all point to a great civil war spread out, a multifaceted civil war in the United States. It said it wouldn't be a clear cut when this is a Hopi prophecy. And summarizing a bit of what Washington's dream forecast was that this black cloud would form in the east, far east, and in Europe, and it would have a red light in the middle of it, which is, like communism, the red light of communism. And it would close in on both shores of the United States and start to destroy it, and burning towns and cities. And this isn't Washington's dream vision. And then, it's the Americans will be, the survivors will be spared by this mighty angel standing kind of over the Rocky Mountains and putting his staff down and saying, they had the Union flag on it, putting this flag down and saying, okay, no more, and the black cloud leaves America. And that agrees with what the Hopi vision was. So, I'm starting to say, well, okay, they're not prophecies from God, but they are prophecies from people that are known to be pretty trustworthy. And anyway, I think that this is where we're headed, and it's going to be difficult because we're going to be bombed, and that's why my partner Tim, who's now dead, but why we invented the EMP shield to try to save as much of our power infrastructure, communication, so that we can have a chance of coming together. And there will be survivors. Even the Hopi said there will be the Europeans, sort of that, or Americans, they've migrated here, and then it will be the people, the Hopi, the Apache, the Sioux, everybody. They will all form together into a new nation of man, centered in the 4 corners of the Colorado and Utah region. And I can see this happening because we have our continuance of government. I can stand on my deck and look out at Cheyenne Mountain. They're replacing the current reactors because the rods are getting old. They're going to throw them out, and we have a number of missiles there, nuclear for defense, that are still hidden inside Cheyenne Mountain. So I know that where we are is probably going to be the last resort, the last defense against these invading forces. So I'm glad that we're here. Good Lord put us here. But I can just see all this forming. It's there's so many things saying that this is going to happen, and I'm glad that we live where we do here in Pueblo West, because we've got about 1,000 families here, 1,000 houses that are military, all retired or whatever. Well, some are still current, but we're in the same gun club together. Anyway, you know what the modern Babylon is in Scripture?
We are the modern day Babylon, right?
Yeah. And it's going to be destroyed like a heavy millstone cast into the sea, gone, destroyed. And when Jesus talks to us in Matthew, I think it is, when he says to the people who would follow him, his people, Christians and Jews, he says, come out of her. He doesn't say get out of the United States or England. He says, come. which means get out of. But in the Hebrew, it's come up out of, like a rapture would be. So I think we're in that time period. We're not going to, we're going to be in chaos here for the next 4 years if it lasts that long. The German thing with Nazi Germany didn't last 7 years. It was a different where you put the start of the Third Reich on. So I would say that people need to be fear or frightful, because this is telling you that you need to get your life in order. We can all see without looking at prophecy that the world is in chaos, and we've got a bunch of loose cannons running around with nuclear weapons. So the reason to be afraid is it's the beginning of wisdom. You need to be on the Lord's team, and you ask for help.
I don't think you need to lose hope, though.
Say again?
I don't think we need to lose hope.
Oh, no,
in
no,
mankind or each other,
Well, mankind has got to go through a few changes, and we know there's going to be a 1,000-year reign at the end of the tribulation period of 7 years, and that's when Jesus himself is here on the throne in Israel, and he will direct us into cleaning up the pollution and stuff that we've done, into using energy properly and all that kind of stuff. So that's the good news. The bad news is temporary. It's just 7 years from some start point, which we think is maybe next year. We're not sure. And at that point, things are so bad on the planet that nearly, about 75 to 80% of the population is going to be dead due to war, disease, famine, and that kind of stuff, and weather. And there are things happening right now that you can't blame on the Illuminati or the New World Order or whatever, or even on Satan and his minions, because there are things happening in the sun and on our planet which are beyond control by us or by the evil ones that are here on the planet, because they got their wings clipped when they got down to earth here. And that's why, the project that I was recruited into in Australia under Dr. Teller, why we dealt with these beings and built facilities, manufacturing and tooling and that kind of stuff, underground and undersea, because they didn't have everything they had in the heavens in the parallel universe where they lived. They were part of the revolution against God. They were cast down into our dimension, and some are still arriving. And the veil, if you wish, the physical veil between our universe and the parallel universe, which are the levels of heaven in the Bible, that veil is said to thin as we approach this time of the millennial reign. And we'll actually be able to see some of these demonic entities, just maybe ghost images, but we'll be able to see them now because they will become more visible as that veil thins.
Is this these entities? Is this what you talked about with the Lucifer's rebellion?
Yeah. They there are some of them that are disembodied spirits that are held within the earth into home, and then there are others that are amongst us here that are in physical form.
I actually have a pretty powerful quote here from your book. People was wanting me to touch into some of it, but here we go. This is page 206, I believe 206. Quote, "Do not think for a minute that Satan is a myth. He is real and on his way to planet Earth, according to the 12th chapter of Revelation. The ancient prophetic writings of the Hebrews are extremely detailed in their discussion of the events which will soon grip our world because of Lucifer's rebellion. And I marvel at the number of people who still do not have a clue they are being herded into a one-way path to death." And that's true. The book of Matthew did say the great deception would be so convincing that only the very elect of this planet would see through it. I trust you will be among those who see through it. And when you said, let me see, and I marvel at the number of people who still do not have a clue they are being herded into a one-way path. See, you can look at that so many ways. It's really a profound statement if you think about it, because we are being herded, almost like some of that herding could be part of propaganda and mind control. This infighting amongst left-right politics. Yes, you can discuss it and talk about it. It needs to be talked about, but there's so much fighting that it's keeping people in a bubble. You know what I mean? This finger pointing and all this and all that, and people don't understand that there's other figures at play that is hurting. They're laughing at us, fighting amongst each other, while this hand it's the magician's trick. Like he's watching us fighting amongst each other, while the magician's trick is over here just hurting humanity towards death, annihilation, and everything else. That's kind of way how you can take. That's the good thing about people's research and writings. You can look at that quote many different ways. That's kind of how I looked at it. So,
well, it's like the chaos in the earth is happening now. It'll get worse. And the Satan will say, on the one hand, I want chaos. I want I want you to worship me. And on the other hand, he will have this illusion to people saying, boy, we've got chaos and terrible things happening, not realizing that this hand over here is really orchestrating it all. And they are being misled, as you say, misdirection by the magician's trick. Yeah. Yeah. Think about this. I knew about all this stuff in 1978. Well, actually, even before that. But I look at
why
this.
is it a slow drip, methodical deception, magician's trick? And not just you've talked about it. I've talked about it. Other researchers have talked about it. But it's even like I've heard. I think David Icke called it the totalitarian tiptoe. But it seems like this deception, this malevolent force amongst in the world, they do things methodically.
Yeah.
Is that because if everything is quick, we'll just rebel and we will see through the BS, or what?
Well, if it's done quick, it doesn't get the support of the people. You might get the support of governments, but the people have to be convinced of the need for global order. And to do that, you have to infiltrate their educational system, their religious systems, and gradually convince them through movies and all that kind of stuff as well. This is the kind of world we really need, peaceful and, love, harmony, and everything together. So they lay that groundwork and then accelerate the negative pathways to nuclear war, possible asteroid impact, weather changes, famine, all that. And the people of the earth will then say, they read the press and they see how bad the situation is on the world in various places. And they say, wow, will no one help? How can we solve this? I mean, who do we go to? And when the people are clamoring for that leadership, just like Nazi Germany, pre-Nazi Germany, they were hungry for someone to solve the economy and make the laws fair and that kind of stuff in Germany. And so Hitler didn't take over Germany. They elected him. They supported him, and it was through the I forget who was in charge of public relations for him, Spear or whoever, but they went through publications there, educational systems, school systems, to convince the people who the enemy was, and that the Jewish bankers and that kind of thing. But they created this enemy, and so people then looked for a solution, which Hitler gave to the Nazi Party. Now you can draw parallels to President Trump, being organizing us to get against the bad guys, and who knows? I don't think he's a Nazi or anything like that, but he's certainly trying to do the right thing. And like in the Third Reich, what is happening now is the Jewish community and the Judeo-Christian community are being targeted as troublemakers, except by President Trump and his administration. But all around the world, we're being targeted as bad terrorists, the obstruction. So why did they make it in dribs and drabs? Because they had to organize so many countries to be positioned with leadership and resources to be ready to join this moral consortium that the devil and his men, the Antichrist of the age, will be able to run. And on that note, in Revelation 13, when they talk about the beast that, causes people to have a mark on their hand and stuff be numbered, the beast is artificial intelligence. We've got three major AI computer systems, one in China, one in Northern Europe. We've got one here in the United States, in Utah. So these things are going to be one in one system. And the problem with AI computer, the beast, is that it's programmed by several programmers who had several different takes on value decisions. So when it has to make value decisions on human life and that kind of stuff and religious preferences, it's going to have a confusing set of circumstances. And it's kind of like, well, flip the dice, because there are two different ways that the AI can interpret action in Africa or the United States or whatever, depending on your moral code, and these codes conflict. And I don't think that the beast or the AI computer system will go, stop, I can't do it, and freeze up. It's going to take a direction that's positive in its mind, and punt. Um, this is why all these things had happened. We were talking. I was talking with Oilman in Dallas in 1972, 72, in 71, early 72. We were in private meetings talking about the growth of the computer industry, where we were headed, and how we would set up a global financial system that was digital, a global one, right? And at that meeting, we sat around the table, and I remember we were talking about, well, okay, if you're going to give everybody an ID that's unique, you're going to have to make it so they can't, be stolen, and we're imprinted on their body. We were talking about then number code on the hand. Why the right hand? Because most people have the right hand for the car key and the left hand for the groceries or whatever you're buying. And those that don't have hands, they have a forehead, and we can tap into it there. We talked about things that were, I wasn't even aware at the time. I hadn't even read Revelation at the time. And so it astounded me when I started seeing these things come up in the back room later, that, we're planning to have this numbering system, and it needed a huge, fast computer system, and massive storage. Well, it wasn't invented yet. So they were having to invent it. So that's another reason it was a drip, drip a little bit at a time. We had to get technology to get up to the level that we could control the planet with the resources we can make here. So I hope that's a long way to
Here's
answer
what,
the question.
and we will be probably talking about a little bit about AI and the D wave, quantum, kindred, Jordy Rose, but one reason why you was talking, and I've thought about this before, but I didn't think of it a while ago whenever I brought it all up. Um, why there's this slow drip, methodical, you know, deceit over humanity. Um, because if you think about it, Stan, these people, these players, these globalists, Illuminati, whoever, whatever you want to call them, these figureheads, they from back then, decades ago, they know they're not going to see the fruits of their satanic labor. You know what I mean? They're not going to
Mm.
see it. So why are they going along with the agenda? I think it's because they're just pawns in the game. I think there's a force. You can call it Lucifer, a dark force, Satan. There's maybe they're being guided. Maybe Lucifer's rebellion, or maybe he's this dark force, this malevolent agent, these whatever you want to call these. Some call them the archons, whatever you want to call them, these entities. Maybe they are already here. They're just working in the shadows, and maybe some of these people are actually possessed, because I do think these certain figureheads, these elites, they sell their soul to the dark side, and there's it's almost like some type of cosmic Ouija board game that's going on, that they, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
I really think that they possessed, and maybe they don't know what they're actually doing. Um, but I'm trying to display it more. It's hard to really put my head around it, because if you think about it, Stan, these people way back then, they're not going to see their fruits of this agenda. So why even go along with it to make this world a terrible place?
Well,
Unless
not
there's
thinking
unless that overarching pyramid, the top echelon, is non-human. You know.
that may be the case, but look back in late 70s. The Club of Rome published a report on the limits to growth of the planet, and there were many members of the Club of Rome that agreed on this.
I think I got that report right over there.
Oh, okay, all
Yeah.
right. Well, now that report, and I reproduced part of that in the last few pages of the Cosmic Conspiracy in the first 200-page lot. And the thing is that these men, even and women that were in the organization, they were studying the way we're consuming planetary resources, and the rate our population growth is, and the rate technology is going. There were about 78 different variables. And they realized that if we're going to survive as a human race, not just for them to take power, but there had to be a central authority to make fair decisions on economics, on war and all that kind of stuff to prevent the human race consuming itself. It's overpopulated the nest, and it's they're crapping in their own nest. We got to get rid of some of them, and so as far as getting rid of some of them, let me tell you, I was once in Perth with.
You glitched out. You there?
I've got something that you want to hear. And so we sat at this little table in his apartment there, and there's a knock at the door, and a guy that I've never seen before comes in with handcuffs on his hand down to a case, like you see in the movies, the handcuffed secret document type thing. Comes in, sits down between Vincent and I at a table there in his house or his apartment. And he says he just got back from, the Middle East or Far East Asia, and he's going to have to deliver a report back to Langley, which would mean that a grain load was going to be canceled at a certain time to these countries, and 100 million people would die. And he was tearful, as you say, because he had a few beers. And he said, I don't know what to do. He said, I've got to take this back. That's my job. And this. And he pretended to get drunk and kind of lay his head down on the table, and his hand with the briefcase, it was so I looked at Vincent across the table, and he looked at me, and I says, is it possible we have a photocopier somewhere on the campus? I know the one. Give me the paper. Gave it. He ran out the door. Was gone for a while. Came back with it. We put the paper back in the briefcase there. It was open, and left it open. And then we waited for the guy to wake up, and then we parted, and he said goodbye and all that. Now Vincent was he was involved in British intelligence. I don't know whether it's MI6 or what, but anyway. So I saw that they were planning already to look at ways to kill large swaths of humanity, get rid of these useless eaters. And it wasn't, to make them gods or anything else or super powerful beings. They were trying to figure out how the whole community can survive so that they could make the products and things that these rich people, use. It was their duty. They figured, that society had built them up to this point where they had acquired control of resources, and several generations they've been making decisions for countries, and they're heading toward this solution to planet Earth. And they were not obviously Christian people or Jewish people. Well, there might have been some Jewish, but they were not religious in their philosophies like that. And so they, they were using self-interest as a motivator, but self-interest required a population on the earth of workers. And it required a population that wasn't dead. So they looked at resource management in the Club of Rome. That was the major gathering point for all these people. I met with Dr. Pache just briefly in a hallway between when he was doing a lecture in West Australia, I think it was, but it might have been in Melbourne. But anyway, these guys really thought that they were doing the right thing. And if you put yourself in their position, the right thing is human race has got to survive. It's got to not outgrow its nest. We're going to have to make some serious cuts. And if you were in their position, Michael, and I were in their position, we'd be faced with a horrible decision if we weren't counting on God to help. We'd be thinking, it's up to us now. What do we do? And there are some other things that have happened that weren't in their planning, like problems with the sun and with the Earth itself, and the aging and various cosmic events that are bombarding us with gamma ray radiation. Anyway, all these things they couldn't predict are now happening, and that's God's decision. And the reason that we have this, what President-elect Trump said, this fake scenario, this fake climate change, fake global warming, this whole thing is a scam. Is the reason is, like you and I would do if we were in charge of the planet or major portions of the planet, if we knew that there was a disaster coming, an asteroid that's going to destroy most life on the planet, or if the sun was going to throw off a shell and burn a lot of the crops on the side of the Earth that's facing it. If we knew this, would we tell the people of Earth, look, these are the situations. Well, just bend over and kiss your ass goodbye because it's going to happen. We can't control it. There would be chaos. There would be pandemonium across the planet. There would be gangs forming all over, and we would destroy ourselves even quicker. So, in logic, you would have to put out a fake story, giving the people hope that there was something they could do by, using clean gas or whatever, and not having cow farts in a great abundance. I mean, all this kind of rubbish keeps people distracted, trying to solve the problem from a human point of view, and it gives people hope that they can solve it. When in reality, you can't control the sun and what's happening to the earth inside. And so you would gamble to save the majority of the population of Earth by lying to them and misleading them, so that when it does happen, you've got a gene bank of seeds. You've got people in underground facilities that have been chosen for their DNA profile or whatever, so that you could restart humanity. And so that's where we are now.
I think that kind of keeps humanity in a perpetual state of failure to launch, like if people seen the movie Failure to Launch. But we need that trial by fire moment, though. Just like my two, she just turned 2 Saturday, my daughter, and time flies. But I can tell her I don't want her to get hurt or anything. I can be that overarching figure that just keeps her from experiencing life and learning. I don't want her to, I've used this metaphor many a times. People probably get tired of me saying it, but I don't want her to touch the hot stove.
Yeah.
And I tell her, don't touch the hot stove, don't touch, or don't touch the light socket, don't touch it. But if she touches it, and hopefully she's okay, I'm not going to let her touch it. Like, yeah, go ahead and touch it, but if she touches it, like behind my back or something, she just learned something. That's like that trial by fire moment. Like, I feel like we need the human race needs that trial by fire moment. Like, just like the government's, they're keeping certain things from us because humanity may self-annihilate itself or can't handle the truth. Yes, it probably will be crazy, certain whatever was released or whatever information and or technologies or whatever probably will be crazy, but in a way we will never move forward and know our truest and highest potential if we continuously had that big brother, that big daddy arching over us and telling us you can't see this, you can't have this information, you can't have that technology. It's kind of keeping us in a dumbed down state. You know what I mean?
Well, are you saying that God is doing it or Satan is doing that?
No, I was talking about, like, we just talking about the government, like keeping certain information from us and technologies, whatever it is, because human race, if we knew the whole truth, that we would go in self-annihilation, kind of like what you said. That's possible, but I still feel like we need that trial by fire moment. Like, how do you know exactly what would happen? Like, it could be the best thing that humanity has ever, let's say certain technologies that they have, whatever it is, or information that they have about whatever. And you hear people say that we can't handle the truth. It's for our own protection and things like that, because society will collapse. We don't know that 100%, but let's say if it did, it collapsed and whatever. That's our trial by fire moment, and we'll be stronger by that. Just like my daughter touching the stove, it hurt. It's gonna it's gonna scar her mind a little bit. Like, she's gonna be terrified, just like society collapsing. but she just became wiser, smarter, um, and she's going to move forward with more knowledge and knowing what to do and what not to do to keep that from happening again, or keep society collapsing again. Because you look at history, society has collapsed many a times.
Well, in this time, we're to the point of destroying the nest entirely, the whole planet. And if you look at what God, Jesus, his son, coming to earth to rule the earth and to bring it back to where it should have been, you can see where the tribulation period, the nuclear war, the great destructions by diseases and whatever, our failure to be proper husbandmen to the animal population, et cetera, you can see where that lesson would be learned by those who survived that period of 7 years of absolute chaos and tribulation on the planet. And they would be then amenable to a better way. And that's when Jesus takes over and rules the planet, brings it back into order for 1,000 years. At the end of that 1,000 years, there's going to be a rebellion. Satan will have been locked up all that time, but his minions and himself are going to come into the surviving humans at that point, and there will be a second revolution against Jesus at that point in time. And that's when history is kind of the end for this. At the end of that millennial reign, the earth and the heavens will disappear in great, huge fire, and a new heaven and a new earth will appear. So it's cyclical, sorry, that this happens. But
I
Jesus
thought
is not.
I thought you was talking about. I'm sorry. I thought you was talking about the certain factions in the government and or just people, within the government keeping certain information and technologies and stuff from us.
Well, they
You
might
know,
have their own reasons. Yeah, they're doing that. But this, in the overall picture, is leading us toward the cry for peace and safety. Harmony on the planet, however you want to call it. And these things are being allowed or being hidden to create the need in the people for someone to help. We do have technologies in the back room that would certainly make life a lot easier. Transport, power, food, all this a lot easier. These are known in the back room. One of them is gravity wave converters, which make electricity wherever you are. You can have electric vehicles. You could have water pumping in Africa or in India, in places where they need water. You could create it out of the air with this technology. That's just one thing.
or cure for cancer. How come we can't have that?
Well, that'll come. That'll come. But these things are being held back because they want people to cry for someone to help them in these big problems. And it's like President Reagan said to the UN that time. He said, I think what we need is for all the world to see an invasion of little green men, and it would bring us together to fight this common enemy. And what have we got right now? He had a copy of Cosmic Conspiracy in his library. His wife bought it. King Charles and his father, they have copies of the Cosmic Conspiracy in their libraries. And I've talked to one of Prince Charles's I guess friends. So I know these things, and they were going to invite me on an expedition over to Egypt to look at what they thought one of their archaeologists had discovered, which was the front door to the tomb of Alexander the Great, and painted on it was something out of the front cover of Cosmic Conspiracy. So I know these things. I've talked to these people. I'm not just talking through my head. Um, they are aware of these things, and they are aware of the common enemy syndrome, which I think they probably stumbled on this just after World War II ended. And they'd realized that they couldn't peacefully, as I said in the book, peacefully get together and form a United Nations, and, kumbaya and all that kind of stuff, because there would always be someone of a religious or political or financial thing that would destroy the order. They had to have a global order, global planetary command, so that no country would, step out of line, because they're all under the control of the central government. And the way to do it, they realized, was they couldn't force it like Hitler had done. They couldn't coerce it, like with the United Nations, they couldn't agree on peaceful solutions. They would have to be like the magician's trick. They would have to be fooled into thinking that a global threat came, and then they would pull together, and to save their lives, they would agree to give power to this world government. That's why a lot of this stuff is being held back. It's for the grand announcement, the formation of the government that will give people these solutions, and they will be happy as they could be. And they'll look the other way when they think, it's taken care of them.
You talked about the deception. the alien deception, and that could be one card that's being dealt, down the road. And maybe they are going to hold all this information and or technologies, cure for this and cure for that, for that grand deception. Maybe they'll use some type of alien being or whatever, some type of scenario to be like this antichrist figure or whatever, or this savior figure, and he's going to release cure for cancer. He's going to release anti-gravity. He's
Sure.
going to release all of this. I can definitely see that happening and taking place.
How would you know that you're talking or watching the leader, the new leader? I mean, AI is so fast, with these quantum computers, that we can generate real time a fake person talking to you. And, it might not even be anybody. It might be the image of the beast, as scripture says, talking to you.
This is Jordy Rose. I try to, my bandwidth is kind of lagging, so I'm going to play it on my phone, just the audio. This is
All
Jordy
right.
Rose talking about had a helping hand in the D Wave and also the Kindred AI. Let me see, play this.
Never been seen before in the history of humanity, making the Industrial Revolution look like a little tiny blip on the path that humans have taken from when we emerged from the ooze a few billion years ago. We are right on the verge of that transition now. So this guy, Rich Sutton, is one of the most famous people in the academic world of AI. And like many, when asked, when will this happen? He says things like this: 25% chance within 13 years of this thing that I'm talking about. When you think about what you read on the news, CNN, BuzzFeed, whatever, they're all kind of the same nowadays. Think about how unimportant that thing is that you're reading if this is true. Yeah? So what does this have to do with aliens? So Sam Harris, who I quite admire, is a very interesting guy, was reciting this parable at a TED Talk that he was giving, and it goes something like this. So say I'm the president of the United States. So I received this message from the heavens. So my microwave dish, my SETI dish, finally captures something. And what it says is, in 50 years or 13 years, we're coming to your planet. You got to be ready. Now, just imagine what would happen if that happened. A super intelligent alien race beamed down a message to all of us Earthlings saying, we're coming July 13th, 2030. And boy, you better be ready, because the mothership is landing right on the front lawn of the White House or wherever you wanted to land on that day. The amount of resources that would be marshaled to try to figure out what to do would encompass the whole world. AI is just like that. So when this thing that I'm talking about happens, it's going to be exactly the thing that you're thinking about those super intelligent AIs. So the one thing I can tell you is they're not going to be like us. So alien means, different. These things that we're building are not going to be people. They might be really smart. They might be really good at all sorts of different things, but they're not going to be like us. They're going to be aliens. And they're going to be, I'm sorry to say, way smarter than every single person in this room in ways that we can't even comprehend. So this, of course, triggers a lot of alarm. One of the guys who talks about this is Elon, who says things like this, like, when you do this, beware, because you think, just like the guy in the stories, that when you do this, you're going to put that little guy in a pentagram, and you're going to have your holy water out, and you're going to wave it at the thing, and by God, it's going to do exactly what you say and not one thing more, but it never works out that way. So this is an attitude that some are having, this emerging alarmism about the way this is going to go. But these words, demons, doesn't capture the essence of what's happening here. I don't know if any of you are turn of the century.
What do you think of that, Stan?
Well, that's interesting. Yeah, I agree.
So brilliant guy. but I feel like he's an entangled. He's in a mixed type of profession, because where he was part founder or co-creator or something of the D wave, the quantum D wave supercomputer. Um, and but what do you think of all of that? Do you think that the Grand Deception may switch from actual aliens, little the great whoever? Maybe that was part of the plan for the longest time, and maybe they may switch and convert it to where our savior is actually AI. Down the road, because that's what it seems like it's going to. AI will be our savior, and then everybody's going to kneel to the emerging AI supercomputer and all this. It's going to save humanity. And that's when AI is going to, the supercomputer, the super brain is going to maybe come up with some type of calculations to come up with cures for this and cures for that and whatever. I don't know. It's it. What do you
Well,
think about that?
the prophecy in Revelation 13 does talk about the image of the beast speaking. And people relate more to, a human than to an alien critter or to a computer that's just faceless. So, uh, you know, I I think that they've known about the they being the fallen ones from the heavens. They know about technology way beyond what we've got, but they could only make examples of that technology with the tools and materials we gave them when we made a deal with them back in the late 50s. I don't think it changes anything because whether it's an AI computed image in real time that looks like a human talking, we know how that works. I mean, I've used the technique in making videos and stuff. It's just not as fast as the AI computer, a quantum computer. Um, they're so fast that they can image things millions of times faster than we can on our computers, and they can make a human appear at the image talking and be the image of the beast, which is the AI. It will create this image for people to relate to. And it won't even be a real person, I don't think. But still, I mean, the Antichrist of this age, apparently he will suffer death and be resurrected magically. And they could use a real person in the beginning, and that person could be assassinated, and they'd just take his image and have the AI deliver his speeches online all over the planet without having public appearances or something. I don't know. There's a number of ways to interpret that, but we're told these clues to look for, and we try to anticipate what those clues are. But when we get to the moment, I think we'll all have a little bit of a surprise as to the way it comes to play. But at least you know to look for something.
What do you, to shift gears a little bit? What do you make? And we briefly kind of talked about it in the beginning. What do you make of DC and these congressional hearings about UAPs and disclosure and all that? I I have a hard time to trust anyone in government. I'm not saying everybody, of course, you can't judge a whole tree of apples just because of one bad apple. I understand that. I was part of government. I was military, but you just don't know who's deceiving who and who to trust. And why are they pushing for all of this now? You know, yes, it could be part of that, like that grand deception. But it seemed like we're just being bombarded with the disclosure talk basically since 2017.
Yeah.
Like I just don't know what the as soon as you think you have it figured out, it's something new or something different. It's just I don't know what exactly the card is being dealt here, Stan.
Well, I think what you're dealing with is how is the announcement going to be made? What are they going to do to convince us that this is real? And the fact that they've been lying to us, we know that for a fact. And we know probably some of the reasons why, but they don't want to let the cat out of the bag until it's the moment for Jesus and his friends to arrive. That they're going to be able to present things to us, to the population, that are like video images of the crucifixion itself because they were there. And a lot of this stuff will convince people then to follow them, to agree with them. But it's got to show that the governments of the earth we're not complicit, but we're trying to understand and not frighten people. And that will come out in this disclosure from all the nations, because they were trying to do the best thing. And they don't want to take themselves into a corner. But then they will say, yes, well, look, we held this back and that back because we weren't certain how you'd react. Well, we'd have anarchy or whatever. And that'll be a CYA for them. But that time is coming. And Jesus did say that, look, when they tell you the Messiah is back, he's in the secret place or the desert there, don't believe it. Because when I come, everybody on the planet will know about every living thing, see my image and light from me, I mean, all over the planet. So the fact that they say the New World leader has to hide in this place or that, and he's backed by Jesus' friends who are the fallen ones, of course, which is rubbish. But when that lie is put forward, everything falls into place. I mean, I looked at the government library for papers submitted in physics, in electricity, and magnetism. And the development of technology in 1958, the records that were kept in the Library of Congress on these developments in these fields, from that point forward, magnetism and current electricity had volumes and volumes of stuff written over the intervening years since 1958. In high voltage electrogravitics or electricity, it's been like this. They've been holding back papers that would tell you a lot of the discoveries that have been made by humans. I was recruited because I was about to file a patent on my plasma drive saucer ship. And so they either would disappear the people that wouldn't play ball, or transfer them over to another project like they did to me down to Australia, get me out of the way. So I couldn't really put a fly in the ointment for them.
Were you in Australia when you had your near-death experience?
No, I was in Dallas,
I,
in
kn-
my flat
I
there.
I know you've discussed it many a times in the past, but maybe I got a lot of new listeners and pretty good bit reach, and maybe they haven't heard your experience. So if you want to break it down just a little bit.
Yeah. Let's see. One time I wrote that down here. Let me just see if it's on this desktop here. Anyway, what happened was I was in Dallas, in the computer industry. Had been trained at IBM for systems analysis and programming, and I was at home in my apartment there in, gosh, I think it was Taylor Avenue or something like that, real close to the heart of Dallas. And I had contracted some kind of a bacteria or virus in my bladder, and I was really in a bad way. And so I went to the local hospital in the afternoon, and I said, "Look, I got this problem." And they said, "Okay, we're going to try an experimental drug at the time, which was acromycin 4, like an antibiotic." And they injected that into me and gave me pills to follow it up after that. And I went home from the hospital that afternoon. And in the evening, I still hurt so bad that my there wasn't a place in my body that didn't hurt. So I laid down in my bedroom there in the apartment, and as I say, it was an apartment complex. And I laid down and tried to put my hands and feet where they didn't hurt so much. And in the final position is, well, my hands were out like this, my feet were crossed and stretched out, toward the end of the bed, like being on a cross. And that helped. I didn't hurt so much. And suddenly I was looking up at the ceiling, and the white ceiling started to close down and was gone. I couldn't see anymore. I thought, wow. And in my ears, I could hear everybody playing in the pool outside in the apartment complex, shouting and playing. And then the sound of that slowly turned down, like someone in the control tower turned down all sound. So I couldn't see and I couldn't hear. And I thought, what an interesting thing. What is happening? And all of a sudden, I seemed to roll out of my body from about the middle up like this. And I could see like a faucet with a drip of water coming out. And I watched it drop in slow motion, just about to hit my navel. And bang, I was out shooting like high speed out into this velvety, smooth darkness. What, through the ceiling, everything. I was gone out. And as a scientist, I was intrigued with all of this, trying to take notes. Man, what is this experience? And then I noticed that as I was moving out toward, it seemed like a light way out there, tiny thing, that I was traveling in a fluid or through a fluid, very fine fluid, and my body was like very fine screen wire. And periodically, there would be a dust plume fly out of my body and fall in the wake back there. And when that happened, it would be a negative emotion that would leave me, or a negative memory or whatever. And this happened a number of times until I was through. And I thought, right, okay, well, that's been a good trip. And then I started seeing off to my right here bunches of stages, little theaterettes, like little TV screens, all going, showing different events in my life where I had met with that person or harmed that person, and they had harmed me or back or whatever. I was saying all these things. I was sitting like a judge in this, looking, impersonally, not personally, but I was looking at my life and I was saying, oh yeah, yeah, that's a fair judgment. That was asked of me to do that, and that's what it led to, caused the problems there. Yeah, and after all these, there might have been 100 of them. They started to close down eventually when they'd shown me enough of my life before that, until there were none. And I remember thinking, I understand. And then like there was a presence behind me on the right side behind me. And I said, what is all this? How does all this work? And that was really a dumb question to ask, because how does the universe work? Physicist, I was thinking that way. And then, I was shown a lot of things. And so much so out there, I understood it all. How the universe formed, how things have gravity, everything. I even asked, how does a flying saucer work? Stupid question, I know. But anyway, it was like a 3D CAD CAM thing. One of them pulled apart like this and showed me the components of what was doing what. Okay. And so I said, well, thank you. I appreciate that. And so I kind of curled up like this, like a fetal position probably. But I said, look, okay, let's go. I'm figuring I'm going to go out there and go to heaven or something, right? Well, no, that wasn't it. When I was content and ready to stay out there, suddenly on my right side, for my ear and shoulder, I was jerked around from my travel out there toward that light. And I looked down and I saw this shiny cord, like metallic cord, connecting my ear down to my body down there. I could see it. And I couldn't stop. There's nothing to grab onto. And I was falling into it. So I thought, right, I won't fight it. I'll fall into it. I'll cut that cord, whatever it is, and then I'll be back out here. Well, I fell into the body, and I had left arm, left leg up on a ledge, in that dimension, if you wish. And the rest of me was in my body, and I was trying to find out where the cord was to cut it. It turned out that it was a phone by the bed there. The old timey phone you pick up and dial, that kind of phone. And I reached my hand out to knock it off so it quit ringing. And it's like moving a 10-pound ham from the small end of it. Your arm is very clumsy. But anyway, I knocked it off. The receiver fell down next to my face. And I could hear my mother's voice on the phone. And I said, she said, are you all right? Are you all right? And I said, no, Mom, I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm just sleeping. I talked to her a bit and then hung up. Well, when I say I hung up, I said, I'll talk to you later. And as that moment happened, I looked up here and I saw that my hand and my left leg that were up on that ledge had slipped off, and I was locked into this area back down to earth. And also that a lot of the things that I was shown out there didn't come through. Like my body was a shoe that was too small, and all the knowledge fell off to the side. And I thought at that point, well, that's the end of this experience, whatever. And, maybe I can remember that stuff later or something. And years passed. And when I was down in Australia in the mornings, around 5 to 5:30, I would have these dream visions, and portions of what I had been shown started to come back in. They would return to the body, but they couldn't all be, taken in at once, I guess. And that's kind of basically how I had that vision. And it changed my life. I mean, I had a different goal in life after I got back. It wasn't to become, a millionaire by the time I was 30 or any of that kind of stuff. It was to help and explain to people the things I learned out of the physics of it, and why it exists, and that kind of stuff. And
Do you think your near death experience was just by happenstance, or do you think all of that was given to you, shown to you for a particular purpose?
I have to think that it was shown to me for a particular purpose. I had all the training and inclinations in my spirit about what to do in life. I had all that there to build on, which were peculiar to get me into the program in a peripheral position so that I could expose all these things over time. I mean, I'd had the Christian upbringing. I just really wasn't, you know, an active Christian at the time, and so I had all the framework there for them to build on, and I do think that the good Lord chose me. But I mean, why else would I be shown the Garden of Eden or what Atlantis was and where it is? These are things that my curious mind would chase and would find and discover to prove the authenticity of the Bible and of God, and the reasoning about why we're all being trained, or sifted out to be selected to be with God in the parallel universe where He is, to go and do things with Him there. And I understood then so many things about why we have to have this free will sorting out to pick the people, the souls that would be amenable to God and to the creation and sustaining of this universe or others, or whatever His kingdom is. But He's recruiting, and to recruit people of their own free will who would support Him, they have to have this free will experiment here, or virtual reality where we are, is for Him to then select the souls that would be of use to Him. And I realized that my life experiences were perfect for His purpose of letting me share the things about the great deception coming, and to warn people and to also help people into enduring these things, and helping other people understand this. So yeah, I guess I was picked. I was selected.
Did a lot of those images and things you saw during your NDE, did it help you with things with your profession also when it came to your science and things like that you're working on and things? Did it help you get through some of the maybe the writer's block and things that maybe you faced, and it
Well, it wouldn't
it,
be till 9 years later that I would even think about writing a book, because I had to go through the experience of being in that Teller project, and then nearly being killed by them, and escaping through the desert. And, I had to go through all that before I'd even think about writing a book. There were a lot of miracles that happened after the night in the desert there, the Nullarbor Desert, when, anyway, it didn't influence my work back in the computer industry. I I took up oil painting as a hobby, and portraiture and things like that, and that went well. And using the computer to compose music, those kind of things, it helped. But um, uh, yeah, I guess, yeah, a couple of years after that in Mesquite, when I was out there, I had bought a house after with my wife. Um, I had a lab I built there, and it following that thing about that, how everything works with gravity and spin. I built a coil there, a spherical coil, and pulsed DC into it in my lab, and that wouldn't have happened if I hadn't been shown certain things out there. So it affected that. But these are all like hobby or personal things rather than occupational things. You see what I'm saying? That was separate. That was money making jobs and whatever, and I was good at it. But yeah, yeah. When I think back, there are so many incredible things that happened in my life, business wise, and you know, um, romance wise, and everything else, that they all fit together to make me who I am today, and what I've been able to share with people. And there have been a lot of people along the way that helped me. Some are now dead, but just due to old age. Uh, and so, I'm like a team leader of a lot of people that let this information come through me, if you understand what I'm saying.
yeah, and you were the producer or something of, what was it, UFOs Are Real, of, was it
Yeah.
78?
Yeah, when did we do that? That was in
78?
83,
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that was RBG Productions in Brisbane, and yeah. Oh no, wait a minute. No, yeah, I'm thinking about the movie we made for TV. You're talking about the ones that I talked about on Channel 9 Perth in interviews. UFOs Are Real was a part of a series of 3 documentaries that Channel 9 made. And yeah, that's interesting because that again was one of these accidents, coincidences. I lived in Dianella, Perth, and I had a house I rented, and I had some armoires, portable closets that were in the house I was renting that didn't need anymore. Put them, one of them into the back of my station wagon, drove out to the garbage tip, and with a lot of other people, and I was parked, to get next in the line to throw it off into the tip. And as I started to pull it out, the what they call the tip commander or something, there the tips are given to certain people to run, as they get to collect whatever they can from the tip. And he came running over and he said, wait, stop. I want that. And I said, well, okay. A guy behind me in this car over here came out and said, no, I want it. And it was a nice armoire, wood finished and everything. And I said, well, okay. The guy behind me came over closer than the guy with the D9 dozer. And he says, look, don't even unload it, because if you touch it on the ground here, it belongs to the tip commander. But if you don't take it out of your car, you could drive out of here and I can have it. And I'd like to have that. So I said, well, okay, I'm easy. And I shoved it back in. The tip commander guy orders his D9, drops his thing and starts to push this guy's car over the edge. This guy pulls out his police badge. He says, I think you better stop. And the game stopped. And the policeman told me, he says, follow me. I'm going to drive out and you follow me home. So I did. A lot of people that were in the tip at that day seeing this happen followed to his house to see what would transpire. So he invited us in, gave tea and bickies to everybody there. And they, we all laughed about it and had a bit of a chat and then went home. One of the people that came in to his house from the tip there turns out to be a producer for a TV documentary that Channel 9 had in the back room that they were getting ready to release on UFOs. And I had mentioned something about UFOs and flying saucers and some, connection to that program. Well, a couple of days after that meeting at the policeman's house, I was out in the front yard, doing whatever you do, watering or mowing or something. And this guy drives up in the daytime and gets out and he says, hi, I was at the meeting the other day and we'd like to talk to you over Channel 9 here. And so we went to Channel 9. They put 20 minutes of my interview about my history in this on the tail end of the documentary. Became the highest ranking documentary they ever had. So they decided to make a series, UFOs Are Real, UFOs Are Here, Stan Deyo, and UFOs. And because of that and the exposure, a publishing company tried to get me to, let them publish the book. And they burned out 2 editors, a couple of writers, and said, we can't do it. So I took the rights back, and my wife and I, wrote the book. And the first 20 some odd chapters or whatever it was, I had almost finished, and I realized it was a totally negative, non-productive book, and threw the whole thing in the trash, started over again, and you have what you have now, the Cosmic Conspiracy. But I felt it wasn't right the first way. I didn't know why, but then I put it to logic, like I would tell the story, and that's what you have. And that's how it all started. I mean, that was the first miracle to get me on the exposure path. And it was not something that I intended. You see what I'm saying? It was a coincidence.
Was it a coincidence, or do you think he was being guided though?
Oh, I was being guided. I'm sure. I said that tongue in cheek about
Yeah,
coincidence.
yeah.
There were things that happened in the desert before I even got to Perth that, astounded me. I mean, I figured, I knew I'd escaped from the organization there in Melbourne, from Sir John Williams and from the Teller Project. And they were afraid I was going to reveal what was going on. And so I worked out a way to hide from them and to escape to escape Melbourne, get over to Adelaide on the way to Perth. And so the night that I was leaving Adelaide to go through the desert over to Perth, I was traveling with some hippie companions, and I kind of grew a beard and looked apart, and the sun shades so that it wasn't visible. I wasn't visible most places. But anyway, I said, okay, we're leaving tomorrow. And one of them said, the hippie said, look, come to us. We've got a UFO meeting here in town, and you might find that interesting. So it was a small gathering, about 40, 50 people. And I went in and was sitting in the audience there, and they had told whoever was moderating it, this guy's worked with computers, with cashless society and UFOs and stuff. And so they pointed to me and said, look, could you just say a few words? And so I thought, well, I'll talk about the numbering system that we were talking about and how that would work, and how the finance company of Australia is part of a whole IBM global network, and that'll tie it into the population here in Adelaide, and that'll be it. So I told him, thanked him, and sat down. And the meeting was over, and I was getting up to leave, and this short little old lady, white-haired lady in a black dress with a little tiny Bible, comes over, pulls on my sleeve, and says, "I know you're leaving now." It says, "Take this book and look where I've marked these passages when you get to some place where you can rest." So I thanked her, and I thought, oh yeah, okay, another Bible basher. And so we left and went out in the desert. We've been out there 2 days, and I was in my car, and the others were in a combi van they were traveling in. We parked near each other, and I sat in front of the headlights of my car and took this Bible out and was reading. It was in Revelation 13, numbering the beast and this and that. I thought, gee, that's what we've been doing. I've been laying the groundwork for that. Wow. And I thought, well, they're going to kill me anyway. I guess it might be wise to talk to God, Jesus. And I said, look, I want to be on your side. Could use a bit of help here because they're on my tail here. And, I made my confession of faith and signed on board, and really meant it, because I figured I was going to die soon. As they'd been looking for me back in Melbourne. One of my friends told me they'd been around looking. And so I folded up the Bible and went to sleep in the car. And next morning we were driving, and the third day we'd driven for a while. And coming toward dark, we pulled off. By the way, there's no road. It was a dirt path through the Nullarbor, the desert at that time. And we pulled off with a path over to the right of it. There were some trees and bushes and rocks and stuff we could make campfire in. So we did that. And we were sitting there having, a hot cuppa, and they had tea in those days. And I looked out in the desert back to where we'd been, and I see this one set of headlights you can see a long way in the desert at night. And it kept coming and coming and coming. Right up, it was going to be past where we turned off. But no, it turned into our campsite. So we thought, oh, well, it's probably somebody wanting a, hot fire, a meal or whatever. So they came in. There was only one guy in the car. And he looked like he was muscular, like Odd Job in the James Bond movie, Goldfinger, whatever it was. And he came and he said, folks, mind if I sit by the fire? He said, oh, here, we'll make you a cup of tea. And he came, I think it was on my right side. He sat on the rock next to me there. And he was too close for comfort. If he was too close in personal space. I felt like, that's a bit odd. But anyway, we talked for a while, and the three members of the team, they were having their discussions on dope, because they were dopers, not me. But this guy in the middle of all that, while they're distracted, leans over to my ear like this. He says, I know who you are. And he told me my real name, because at the time I'd been traveling under a pseudonym of Noah Davidson. And he told me who I was. He said, I've been sent here to kill you. Ah, so what do you do? He's that close, he could break your neck. And I didn't know if he had weapons on him or whatever. And I said, okay. And he said, but relax. He says, I'm going on to Perth. I have a mission over there as well. He says, I'm a Jesuit priest. And he said, I'll just tell him that I couldn't find you on the way over here, and you can live another day. Good luck. Now, why did he let me off? I have no idea, but I saw him later, years later in Perth. But
I know we're out of time, but why were they trying to take you out?
Because they didn't want me to reveal the plan, that we had anti-gravity. We've been dealing with alleged aliens and stuff underground there, and that Russia and the United States, Canada, Great Britain, all of us, Australia, were working together in this outside of normal political structures. It would have screwed up the whole plan. And I was, because I'd written a paper for Sir John, who was my control agent. I'd said, look, I think we ought to release at least the anti-gravity so that we can start helping the poorer nations to survive and get food and water and that kind of stuff. And he said, I don't think that that's within our plans. And he ended up, after we'd had several weeks of discourse on this, having his man in the office. He had an odd job guy too. Bring all my files and papers and put them on my doorstep and say, we're not connected anymore. And I was dismissed. And then not long after that, they tried to get me through an insurance company, investment company, to come and build a laboratory to research my free energy thing in a mine shaft in Ballarat, which was several thousand feet deep. And they were, I realized what they were setting up was I was going to be down there by myself, couldn't tell anybody anything, and the mine shaft would close, I'm sure. So,
You actually had a Jesuit priest
yeah,
sent to try to take you out.
yeah, he was with Pope John the 23rd, is that right? He was in the Vatican next to the Pope when he opened up the third letter of Fatima. And, the Pope fainted because they thought he was the Pope that was going to betray the flock. But yeah, he was a Jesuit priest, but he's also, the Jesuits have enforcers. And I don't know how they were connected. I don't know why they sent him. I mean, the FBI was looking for me in Melbourne at the time, and they're not even, supposed to act outside the United States, but they were going around trying to find me. And I had the Russians also. So, I didn't really think I was going to outrun them all or live. And the fact that he told me that certainly was interesting. And there were miracles after that day, axle braking and the trailer I was pulling with fuel in it and stuff. And that resolved itself as a miracle. And then, um, the last day in the desert when we crossed over into West Australia, into the small towns there, it's a Sunday morning and we were hungry, didn't have enough money to have a big proper meal. So we pulled however many dollars and cents we had to spare and went into a milk bar there, which is like a small mom and pop shop, where you get food and shelter, or not shelter, but food, like
Cafe or something like that.
yeah, but not even a big cafe, but a little like a little
Diner.
7-Eleven, little 7-Eleven tiny thing.
Okay.
And I walked in and I could smell the bread, the fresh bread. I could see it there next to the register sitting on some paper. And I was going to try to get some cheese and bread for us to share. And so I called out, is anyone there? Is anyone there? No one's there. So I thought, well, that's what we need right there. If I just put this money on the counter and take that, maybe that'll be enough. I don't know. And just about the time I was ready to pull out and write a note, this lady comes out of the back room and she's got an apron. She'd been back baking and hadn't heard me. And she said, oh, can I help you? And I said, oh, yeah, look, uh, we want some of that bread and cheese. We've got this much. Will that buy, some of that? And she said, oh, no, I'm sorry. There's no charge. You can take it for free. And I said, what? She said, yeah, it's free. Take it. I said, I don't mind paying. She said, no, look, the Lord told me back in the kitchen that I'm going to have to give you this. And I said, really? The Lord being, she said, well, Jesus. And said, enjoy. And I walked back to the truck and to the car. I said, look what they gave us here, just for free. And miracles, bigger, smaller, whatever, all the time happened after that, even right up to this day. And, I didn't need it to convince me, but I do marvel at the fact that all these things happened to me and guided me to this moment in time to be here with you even.
All these years later, and to give your testimony and to keep giving your testimony. And
why, ask yourself this, Michael, why haven't they stopped me since I came back to the States? They took my citizenship away.
I didn't want to cut you off, but I was thinking that whenever you was telling me your story.
Yeah, look, yeah, I marvel at it because I applied for returning to the States. I didn't have a citizenship. They'd taken that away. I've got the letter to prove that. They took away my passports. I was locked into Australia for 30 years nearly. And then I asked through the State Department, and that didn't work. They wouldn't give me a green card even to come back. And finally, because of a message that former Secretary of Defense Jim Schlesinger had passed to me when he was there in Australia with President Clinton, he knew about my book. They had a copy of it there in the Clinton administration in the cabinet. And he said, we know who you are, and we think that what you've revealed is correct in your book. So I thought, well, I'll call him. It's a friend. He was out of government. He was with something brothers, Lehman Brothers. So I called his office from Australia, and I said to his secretary, "Can I speak to him? Just need a quick word." And she says, "No, he's out to lunch. Can you just leave a message?" I said, "Well, here's my phone number. Tell him that Stan Deyo needs a favor." Okay, hang up. 2 days later, I'd been trying to get the State Department, everybody look at my stuff to help me get a green card. I get a call from the Melbourne office of the American consulate. And she says, "Oh, Mr. Deyo, this is such and such. We have found your records, and there was a mistake. You never lost your citizenship, and we're going to give you a new passport. You can come home now." And she says, "Do you have any children here?" I said, "Well, I had 3 born in this country." She, "Good. They're all now American citizens. We'll give you new passports and citizenship papers for them." And I thought, oh boy, I bet my plane's going to explode on the way back home. But I played the game, and I said, okay. And I lived through it. I came back. Everything was normal. And I haven't really had any official, reprimands or threats or anything from anybody since I got back. But every day I kind of wonder, why am I still alive? And then I realized that perhaps they're using my testimony here and telling people about these things as a grassroots level release of the information that they could cut off immediately. They could say, "Stanley, you're crazy." And that would disavow what I've written or said, perhaps. And that way they don't have to cover up the death of a guy that would cause, like
almost like a soft disclosure or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there are other people like me. I mean, you've mentioned some, but I mean, that have outlets and podcasts and whatever else that are talking about the same things we're talking about, and I don't know them. So something is motivating them to release certain amounts of information, and so I can only assume that's the reason that I'm still here, is that I'm an unofficial leak.
Well, Stan, man, I really appreciate you going a little bit of overtime with me. It's always a treat, honor, and privilege to have you on the show. And maybe I can get you back on down the road, and I just want you to have the floor like you've had the past almost 20 minutes, just kind of just giving your testimony. Just maybe we could title it "The Chronicles of Stan Deyo." You know what I mean? And I'll just be a passerby, just listen to your life story, maybe things you've never even said on any podcast.
Oh, probably there's a lot of stuff to
Oh,
tell.
oh yeah, I'm sure.
When you
Because
said Stan Deyo Chronicles, it reminded me one of the translators I had over in Ethiopia, in Goro Plateau, where we're in the Garden of Eden. And I'd taken the whole crew. We'd taken several hour trip up to 10,000 feet to where the water sprung up to water the Garden of Eden. And I'd known it was there, and I needed to film it to prove it to people. And my translator was standing next to me. And when I showed them the water, the 20-acre area where the springs came up to water all the great rivers that came out of Eden, and other people with me, the guards and stuff, they said, "Wow!" And this translator leaps up and he goes, "We're going to call this Stan Deyo Crater," But anyway, it was funny. It just reminded me of how he did that. Yeah.
well,
Yeah.
I'm being serious. I think our next podcast it'll be several parts. It don't have to be like back to back to back. We can take a month off, but the Chronicles part 1, part 2, just almost like a little biography or whatever. But yeah, Stan, thank you very much. It's always a treat, honor, and privilege to have you on the show, man. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Appreciate it. You take care now. Keep doing the good work.